Hey guys! Yes, Miles, we are rolling. How are you tonight? Ready to talk about some audio? Thought that was appropriate for tonight. Yeah, we're here. I'm here. Will's here. Hey, you made it on time, Will. How you doing? Good to see you. I think Miles is about to check in as well. All right. I'm going to hold off before we really get started. You staying dry, Will, over there? These crazy rainstorms and this late in the year are not fun. Hey, Brian. How you doing? Thanks for joining. Thanks for adding the questions too, bud. Dan, you made it. Good to see you, buddy. Hey, Will, I missed my invitation for that crawdad boil, though. I don't know. It must have gone into my spam folder or something. I'll have to make sure to catch that next time. That looked like a whole lot of fun. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about audio. I had a request from Will. Actually, yeah, thank you. Hazy. Not sure why. Better back here, Brian? I don't have anything to clean my lens with. Yes, I do. Hi, Miles. Glad you could make it. Need Miles here. He's the one that always fills in all the... Is that any better, guys? Yeah, it's smog. We're getting poured on, Dan, here in San Diego today. So, last couple days, in fact. So, not a whole lot of smog. That's not a big issue. Hi, Susan. How are you? Do we get to see video of your talking skulks up and running? I've been waiting. I know you're working on it. So, okay. So, Will had a request about audio. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I know you guys are my regulars anyway. So I think you guys all subscribe to me over on my YouTube channel. But if you don't, make sure to go over there. I've got over 100 videos over there. In fact, I just posted this morning. Brian helped me get it up and running. The video from last week where we talked about the talking skull. So that's now up on my YouTube channel as well. If you missed that, make sure to go back and catch that. One other favor I would like to ask, especially you guys, my regulars, if you would share this or when the posts come up for these videos, I would sure appreciate it. I've got access to some of the sites, but it would be a great help if you guys still feel this is useful and worthwhile. If you would help me share it and pass the word along, see if we can get a few more people to join in. So I would really appreciate that if you would do that, if you feel so inclined. So we're going to talk about audio tonight and adding audio to your props and how important that is and how often it's overlooked. Oftentimes, as with lighting, we get so interested and concerned about building our actual prop that we sometimes forget about doing some of the other things. And audio certainly is very important. I run a lot of different audio tracks in my haunt, probably at least 15 or 20 different tracks are running simultaneously at different props all the way around the property. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can incorporate audio into your props, whether it's general audio that you're sending out, such as your graveyard. And like in my graveyard, let's see if I can pull this out. It can be as simple as, I have a boombox and I have an audio track that I bought somewhere, with graveyard sounds, or I found it on the internet, made a CD of graveyard sounds, and I just stick it in my graveyard, turn it on when I get started, and that runs just very low in my background, just so that there's kind of that extra layer of audio. And so it can be as simple as that. or it can be as complex as adding audio controllers, audio tracks into your controllers, playing them through their own separate speakers, etc. So anyway, hi Steve, Paul, Allison, good to see you guys all. I am live, Allison. So if you're not, maybe restart and try again, because I am. So anyway, as far as the audio goes, really three kind of basic components to consider when you're starting to work on adding audio into your prop. The controller, it's going to take something to play it. Whether, like I said, like it's a boombox or it's audio on a dedicated controller. You're going to need some kind of a speakers. I got to make a note. I want to talk about that. Some type of speakers to project that audio. And then you're going to need some kind of an audio track or CD or something that actually is playing. So we're going to kind of talk about all three of those. Hi, Gabriel. Thanks for joining us. Start with the controller. Like I said, my graveyard scene's played on a simple boombox. You can run it off the stereo from your house and run speaker wires out to your front yard. Whatever's convenient for that type of music. You can use 5.1 stereo and run it to multiple speakers around if you want as your background music. And again, that's one layer. For me, since I am running so many different audio tracks, a lot of my concern is noise pollution between the different audio players. So, I may have in my graveyard 6 or at least a half a dozen different props that have their own audio tracks just in the small front yard. So I have to be a little bit concerned that they're not blowing each other out or overlapping too much. So if you're standing right in front of that particular prop, you're going to get the audio from that prop. But I don't want it to bleed too much over into the next prop. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see that or hear that. And the exception to that is my Papa Voodoo prop. Now, again, if you're not a subscriber to me over on YouTube, go over and check out the Papa Voodoo video. That prop is kind of a little bit different, and I think this is the one Will was asking specifically about, is how I get the booming audio out of Papa Voodoo. That particular prop is being run through my DMX lighting system, and that system is also triggering that prop off. It's not on a PIR like most of my other props. It's actually timed to trigger. So that prop will trigger. There's a break. We go back to my regular lighting in my graveyard. Then the witch's scene, which is the new witch and skeleton that's in my driveway next to my graveyard, that prop goes off. And then runs through its routine, and after it finishes, again, another break, and then Papa Voodoo gets triggered, and when he goes off, all my floodlights in my graveyard dim down, and the two floodlights for Papa Voodoo come up, and they're going through their routine. Papa Voodoo gets triggered, and his audio, although my other props in my graveyard are still going off, Papa Voodoo, I want him to really overpower everything else going on in my graveyard. So for him, he's kind of an extra special. I use a big guitar amp for him, and he really booms out. You can hear him on the next block. So hi Jerry, hi Corey, thanks for joining us. You kind of have to assess your setup and what's going to work for you, and kind of make sure whatever you're setting up, that one prop isn't overshadowing another one if you've got it too close. So consider that a little bit when we start talking about how big of speakers to use, what kind of controllers you use, and everything else, because it does kind of depend on how many different props you've got using their own independent audio system. So you have a lot of choices with the controller. I know a lot of us are using the Peekaboo controllers from Fright Props, and they do have audio, although the audio on the Peekaboos is mono. and it leaves something to be desired. In fact, it was one of the biggest considerations for me to build my own button banger controller, because I really didn't like that mono sound. I like having crisper stereo sound, and so that's why a lot of my controllers, and we'll talk about those, use different audio components instead of running mono. But if you're just trying to get a scare track or a scream or that type of thing, those controllers are certainly more than adequate. The audio track or the audio players on them will certainly do a very good job for you. They're easy to set up, they're easy to program, and so it's a simple way to get up and running with your audio. Another advantage that the Fright Props have, their controllers, that the controllers I build and a lot of some of the others of us for our do-it-yourself ones, is they have an onboard amplifier. And what that allows you to do is to, you don't need powered speakers. You can use a standard, little small speaker. It's easier to embed and hide and mount inside of a prop. So you can get away with that instead of having some of the speakers we'll talk about here in a little bit. That's kind of nice. Again, it makes it a little bit easier. You just run in one wire, and it's much easier to hide that in your prop. One thing that if you are going to use the onboard amp to realize is you want to make sure that you've got a suitable sized power supply. If you want to take advantage of all the power and all the volume and crispness at the high volume, make sure that you're using a sufficiently sized power supply if you're using a controller that's got an onboard amp. So I think they cover that in the documentation from Fright Props. So, but that's just something you want to consider. Now, what I personally like to do, and on my boards, and if you guys haven't seen, I know a lot of you guys have seen a lot of the boards. This is kind of a demo board that I take when I'm doing presentations with some of the boards, the circuit boards that I've designed and I've built and I use for my own personal haunt. And we've got started when we were building these. We were really excited. We found these little audio players that we were getting from MD Fly, and they use an full-size SD card. It slides in the back here, or you can use a micro SD card with an adapter. And the stereo sound, we were able to do a lot of things to follow the busy, if the program's busy and running. We're able to do a lot of things, run multiple tracks, multiple folders, and they're great. Love them. $10. And again, if you look at my controllers, this is the controller, or the audio board that I use in all of mine. Of course, now it's not quite as easy, and I'm happy Richard joined us because he had a question about these. We've had an issue in the past getting these. I'm probably my own worst enemy with these. When I advertised to everybody in the world how great these were, and now we have difficulty getting a hold of these. Now, MD Fly is the company we get these from, just the initials mdfly.com. Thanks, Miles. And we were always able to be fairly consistent. May have to wait a week or two to get these, but we were always able to get these. However, the last few months, they have not stocked these, and they finally have them back in stock. And we were so excited. I know Tim, for his controllers, he ordered 20 of them. I fortunately only ordered 5. And the problem with them, they've got them numbered the same as they did the old boards, and they swear that they are drop-in replacements for the old version. They are not. We're having difficulties with the programming on these. Let's see if I can hold this up and you can see the difference. You can see that is an entirely different design on that board. So what we think they did is they went out and made up their own. Instead of buying these from Tenda, now they are selling these, the green ones. The control, or the programming on these is not the same as the others. So At this point, I think Richard was asking specifically about Frankenstein. I have not figured out how to make those work on Frankenstein yet. I talked to Steve at length yesterday, and we're working on some stuff, maybe having to redo the programming, or maybe make up a little daughter board where we can plug in a different audio card that he's been testing. I do have these working and have figured out how to make these work on some of my, like my simple prop controller. I've got it running now. I've figured out the new commands and been able to reprogram those. But currently, the new ones from MD Fly are not drop-in replacements for the old ones. So stay tuned for further updates with that. Hopefully we'll be able to resolve that issue. So we've tried a whole lot of different ones. If you follow us on Haunt Forum, and if you're not on Haunt Forum, a lot of these tech discussions take place over there. We've got a pretty solid tech group over there. This was a little audio controller we were testing, and I actually have this working now. I've been able to add sound to my little Easy 6 board, which previously did not have audio with it. We've been able to get these to work, and I think there's codes over there on a thread on Haunt Forum for those. Steve has been really happy with this little drop-in board. As you can see, it's a little bit different configuration to be able to pins on there. I think you can see 3 rows of pins. And that's what he's using, like on the Easy Talker now. It's a drop-in, and one of the neat things about the way this is designed, grab one that doesn't have a board on it. Oh, they both do. At least for us, when we're designing boards, is now we can hide components. As you can see, that audio card is going to sit right here on these 3 risers here, and we can put components under there. So even though this board goes in flat, it's not costing us really much space on the board, because we are able to put components underneath it. So he's been pretty happy with this board, but again, this is an MD Fly product, and we've been having problems even getting these. So this is the one for the wee little talker. He uses the same board currently on Banshee, and if you haven't seen a Banshee, you should go over to a site and look. Talk about frustration. I was so excited. I finally had a couple hours yesterday to build this board up. Thought I had all the parts, and I forgot that I had to order parts from DigiKey. So the board is all built except for the few little odds and ends I need from DigiKey. I ordered those yesterday, and I'll have them in a few days. But you can see how that audio board just goes on there. And this uses a micro SD card. Which is really nice. They're smaller. One thing with the boards that we were using is they only really work for 4 gigabyte SD cards, which are getting harder and harder to find. If we can get the new boards from MD Fly to work, they're supposed to work with SD cards up to 32 gigs. So that'll be an improvement, but we just need to figure out the new coding for those. So, those are some of the boards, for the do-it-yourself style. You can get them in the set boards. Miles Mark posted the Haunt Hacker site for the Banshee board and the wee little talker. And I'm kind of moving out of producing boards, but I do still make them for my own haunt. And that's always what I've done is built them for me. And designed them around what I need, and then made them available if somebody wanted them. So I do have some available. You can go over. I'm in the process of switching websites, but hallstaff.com is where some of my boards are displayed. That's my old website, and the new one, although it's up, I'm not going to pass that out yet. So that's where some of my boards are. Again, I mainly make all of these to accomplish different things for my haunt. I've got a circuit for doing the fading eyes. This is how the eyes of my skulls on my columns fade in and out. So I designed a little board for that. My Easy 6, this is what I use if I'm just doing 3-axis and not having to worry about jaw control. I've got a couple different styles of basic prop controllers. My Frankenstein board, my 3-axis controller. my version of the two button banger. Tim makes the Scuba, distributes the Scuba Spook board, which is a 4-channel board, similar to what I do, but his is 4-channel. Mine's a little crisper as far as timing than his is, but again, his is 4-channel, mine's only 2. So again, Scuba Spook, Tim Thompson, Mark, has got the 4-channel boards. Again, he's running into the same issue with the audio cards as we are. I know Tyler has got one of the new audio boards, and he's been trying to figure it out to be able to work, but that's why Tim is being hesitant about advertising his boards as well, because all he's got, he's willing to sell boards with his personal audio cards in them, in the hopes and expectation that we'll get the new ones figured out. So again, Tim Thompson, Thompson, I think, on Facebook. You can go into my friends list and find him, or Dan's Facebook page and find him. We're both friends with him. If you have trouble getting a hold of Tim, let me know, and I can get you the information for that. And he is also on. I'll take a quick second. If you guys, I know I've pushed it before, but if you want to sit and visit with us, we get together every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Pacific time. We do a video chat, Haunt Tech, and there's about 8, depending, 6 to 10 of us that'll be on there. Dan and Steve and Tim, Pat, who's going to be on a little bit later, are all on there. It's open to anybody. You know, you're welcome to come join. You can participate. Allison's there. Or you can just sit and listen, whatever you want to do. But we do that. We sit and talk about this for 3 hours every Wednesday night, this type of stuff. So if you ever want to join us, let me know. And we're more than welcome. We'd love to have you. So that's the new Tenda wireless, or the Tenda boards. The other option that you've got, and really the only board that I use it on, is Steve did some custom programming for me that I think is available on the site for using the Banshee board and using a wireless mic that I use for Jarvis. So I use a little wireless mic to feed the audio in to the Banshee board on Jarvis. And then it's going to send one channel to the Banshee board to drive his jaw. So his jaw is going to act in response to my voice. And then the other channel is going to be run through the speaker so that people hear what I'm saying. So that's another option for adding audio to your prop if you want to do live stuff. I don't do this for any of my props during my hunt. I've got too much to do to be able to, to have time to focus on this. But, the plans for Jarvis is that he's going to be with me at conventions and stuff where I can dedicate some time to doing that and paying attention to him. So he gets really upset if I don't pay him attention when he's all charged up and running. So any questions on controllers, stick them down in the comments, guys, and anything else as we go along, make sure to if you've got questions, put them down in the comments. I'll try and keep up with those as we go. So speakers, this is the spot everybody goes to when we're talking about audio, and it's of course it's important, but again, it's just one of the 3 components of the process. So so many of my props and my characters are talking 3-axis skulls, or even just talking skulls or masks, and so each one of my characters has got to have its own dedicated set of speakers. So what I started with when I first started building these is these powered speakers. Again, mine need a powered speakers because my boards don't have onboard amps. So I just use a pair of computer speakers. Now these are, let's see if I can get the name on. I know it's reversed. Kimyos. These are $10 computer speakers from Big Lots. And I probably got a dozen or 15 pairs of these in different props around my graveyard or around the house. And they work okay. Not great sound, but especially if you're just having them scream or there's a lot going on. You don't have to have super high-end speakers, and they're $10 a pair, so you can't beat that. It's no big deal I'll drill a couple holes in them and then run some zip ties and then mount these high in the chest of my characters to get the audio as close to the mouth as I possibly can. One, it's more realistic, and two, it does a pretty good job of covering up any servo noise. We talked about that last week when we were doing the Talking Skull video. But the closer you can get these up to the top of the chest, the better it's going to disguise that servo noise, and the more realistic your character's going to be. So, yes, and yeah, you can take the speakers out of here too. You don't have to leave them in these components. I do, mainly because it just weatherproofs them just a little bit, even though if it rains, and fortunately being in San Diego, I don't have to worry about this much, but most of my electronics are not going to be out in the rain. But anyway, so this is entry level, option number one, cheapest way you can go, I think, besides, getting them on a thrift store or something. $10, big lots. That's what I used to use. I have gotten more picky, if you can say that, and want to have my characters have crisper audio. And so the ones I'm currently using are these. And these are Logitech's, I think they're the Z130s. And they're $20 from Walmart. They're quite a bit cheaper or more expensive if you get them on Amazon. But I think the best price I've seen them is at Walmart. And Walmart's got pretty good shipping too. If you have never ordered from Walmart, you might check it out. But those are my favorite right now. They're a little bit smaller. They're a little easier to hide. They don't take up quite so much room in the chest. And the sound quality is, leaps and bounds better than what the big lots ones are. So those are the ones I currently use. Again, the Logitech Z130s, about $20 from Walmart. Now, again, Will was asking about how I get the audio to boom out of Papa Voodoo, and Will lives in town here with me, so he's seen him live. He sits at the back of my graveyard, and so we probably have 20 feet, 25 feet before my fence where the audience is standing when they come by. And so it has really got a boom. And again, I still have some of my other props are still going off. They're not set on my DMX system. So when Papa Voodoo is triggered, I want him to take control of the graveyard. Again, all the other floodlights have gone down. Only his floodlights are up. The little spots on the tombstones are still up. I've got some of the other props, that are still getting triggered off as their timers expire. But I really want his audio to boom. So I use a guitar amp. It's about that big around, 18 inches long. To boom his audio, and it does a heck of a job, really pushing out his audio and really getting it to boom. Great deep sound. So I really like using that for him. Of course, I can't do that on all of my props. It just doesn't. Too much competition. But that one particular prop, when he's the primary one going and I want all the attention on him, I'll run that guitar amp with his audio. Now, I mentioned a little earlier, concurrently or added to that my DMX system, I've got two major scenes that run off that DMX system in addition to my lighting. And I don't ever want the two scenes to be running at the same time. I want people to focus on one or the other. So Papa Voodoo runs, we have a break, then my witch and skeleton scene goes. And for that particular prop, I use a nicer set of Logitech speakers with a subwoofer on it. I want to be able to, I've got some thunder and lightning there. I really want some boom out of my speakers. And I also want stereo because I've got one speaker set at the skeleton and one at the witch. And I want that separation of their audio tracks. So the system I am using, again, it's another Logitech system. It's the Z323. It's about $50 2 speakers, 30 watts. They have one that's a little cheaper. It's a 25 watt system. That's $35. But you get, a nice little subwoofer that you can use to really kind of boost up if you've got a special prop that you want to do. I think I got the last one for that scene. I think I got it off of Amazon. So again, the Logitech Z323, $50 with a subwoofer, 30 watt, and that's what I'm using. Again, you can go and hear that if you watch the video on my YouTube channel from the new Witch and Skeleton scene that we're in the process of continuing to work on. So, and I did want to mention, I had a couple people ask me last time about the puppeteering and how we do that, and if we can do that on a Facebook Live, and someday we will, but it's a pretty complex, extensive procedure to do that. For those of you that don't know, I write a monthly column for Servo magazine. That's backwards. Anyway, for Servo magazine on do-it-yourself animatronics. And for those that were interested, December's issue of last year, December 2016, I did an article on puppeteering. So, this goes through how that's all put together, the parallax boards that we use, how we do the puppeteering. So there's a ton of information in that article, and you can check that out. And if you've got more questions, I'm certainly happy to go over that. But for those of you that were asking, here's a great starting point, the article from December of last year on that. Okay. Any other questions? Keep posting questions, guys. I'm going to run out of stuff, or I'll run out of stuff, and I'll have to go to drinking or something. So, now, third component. You've got your controller, you've got your speakers, but now you need to put something on that SD card to plug into the controller. So, you've got a lot of options here. You can certainly go out and find stuff on the internet. There's a lot of sites on the internet that provide audio tracks and scare tracks and stuff that you can find. Some are free, some you have to pay for. I would be careful copying other people's audio tracks, especially if you've got a pro haunt. Enough said on that issue, but respect the pro haunts and the people that have gone out there and paid for this stuff to have it made. Enough said on that. I use, or if you can't find what you want, something that doesn't fit, you want something custom, you can always record your own. And I got for what? Somebody gave me a comment about on the nomination. I'm not sure what that was, but I know what that was. That's right. It's going on tonight. It got released half an hour ago, didn't it? The Dead with Dave Awards. Lost my train of thought. Oh, if you need custom stuff, this is the direction that we've gone in for a lot of the haunt or the different characters that we've done. All have now, starting with Pirate Pete, the Big Red, Papa Voodoo, the Witch Scene. Those are all custom audio tracks that between a group of us, we've written and produced. I haven't produced. I don't do any of the audio. I'll make that perfectly clear right off the bat. I don't record any of the audio tracks. I got talented people that do that much better job of that than I do. But we write all our own tracks, and Pat Dead Things, who is often on here and on the other chats, is one of the people that does the recording for some of my tracks. He is the skeleton, actually, and he is also, I believe, he's Papa Voodoo. So, we do that. We incorporated some new people every year. We try and bring somebody new in. We brought in Roxy, is our witch this year. For the witch scene. If you don't know Roxy, she's one of the primary moderators again over at Hauntform. Hey Tim, glad you could join us. So That's what we do. We go. We're again very fortunate that Pat has got. He's still a musician, and has got a friend that has got a studio, and so we can professionally mix the different tracks. And put them together. If you don't have access to that, and I know not many people do, we're very fortunate with that. We've got people all over the country. Pat's in Canada, Roxy's back east, I'm on the West Coast. We can all do different things. Brian Lincoln is in Arizona. We can do different tracks. We can send them to Pat. They compile them up there and put them together with all the background tracks that we want, and do that. So Miles is also putting in here a voice recorder that records unbelievable audio on your phone and saves a file. Yeah, and Brian Lincoln has got another app that he's using too for his phone. He does a lot of his audio tracks on. If somebody's interested, I'd be happy to contact him and get that from him. Another audio editor that we use a lot is Audacity. It's free. It allows you to do a lot of things and reverbs and changing tones and everything. I got started using that when we were doing Talking Skulls, when we had to actually make a tone track to drive the Jaws. We don't necessarily have to do that anymore. Steve's programming now does all that work for you. So makes the Banshee board and the wee little talker a whole lot easier to get up and running. But still, if you don't have Audacity, you definitely should download that program. It's very useful for a lot of the stuff we do for haunting. And I had a question. Brian had asked me, what's my preferred audio format, if I use WAV files or MP3s. I personally use MP3s. There's a couple. Hey, Jake, good to have you. Jake should be doing this seminar. I took Jake's audio seminar at Transworld in St. Louis this year. He did a killer job. I should be having him teach tonight. But anyway, I use MP3s mainly because my audio boards, these audio boards that I'm using, it's tied to a prop controller. Anyway, it requires MP3s. So if you are going to use MP3s, hey Michael, thanks for joining. And you're going to use Audacity and MP3s, you have to download a separate encoder. It's called LAME, L-A-M-E. And it is not an Audacity product, so they cannot actually have the download link on their page. So I think they tell you to go, you have to go get it, but just Google Audacity LAME encoder, and you can go download that encoder and put it on in Audacity, and then you can create MP3 export as MP3s. So MP3s, they're compressed, so they're smaller file sizes, which is nice, but of course it's lower quality. For what we do, I don't think the quality difference is a big deal. We're doing screams and yells, and for the most part, it's just fine. It won't bother you a bit. The WAV files are great. If you're doing something that requires much better sound quality, but again, they're going to be much bigger files. So weigh that. But that's what I use is MP3s. So. Yeah, Tim and WavePad Editor. I have not used WavePad Editor, but again, Audacity is just fantastic. Every haunter should have Audacity on their laptop or on their computer. You'll find tons of uses for it. So, hey, Mark, thanks for joining. One other question, I forgot to cover this. Brian had also asked what I like for my speakers, if I'm using powered AC or if I use batteries, and I use both. So like Jarvis, and I think I've talked about Jarvis before, Jarvis has got a host of batteries. I've got things that are USB powered. Of course, my GoPro's USB powered, the speaker's USB powered. They have to be powered separately. I've got great big batteries for powering all the servos in his body. I've got smaller batteries for running other things. So again, I use both. I do have a little set of battery-powered speakers. So, it's about this big, and it uses a couple 3 AA batteries, and I carry it on conventions a lot when I'm teaching on conventions, but it's also great for going out and testing props. It's one less thing I got to plug in. When I'm out testing props, I can just plug this thing in, turn it on. So it's really a handy tool to have, if for no other reason, just to have it in your toolbox when you're out working in the yard on your props. You don't have to be running around looking for an empty plug or an extension cord to plug in another set of speakers. And again, you can get them. They're really small and really handy. So I do both. Will, I do not use a Raspberry Pi in my haunt yet. Although, on my list of things to do is to use them. So I've got 2 separate ones sitting here right in front. One of these days when I can find some time, I'll be using Raspberry Pis. But I just haven't had time to get to that. Besides writing my articles, for those of you that don't know, I'm working on a book, putting all this stuff together in a book. The last 2 years of articles that we've done on do-it-yourself animatronics will hopefully be into a book. So that's taking up quite a bit of my time right now. So yes, and Tim, Will said the same thing. I think that he takes those speakers apart. And that's a great point. If you're using USB speakers, that you can use the same power supply volts that your servos are using, same power supply. I don't know, would they cause any bit of feedback and apply any jitter to my servos? That would be my only concern. So, but I would watch that. Queen Mary Vamp plugins. Oh, I will have to check that out. Okay. Miles, we'll have to talk. We've been talking about the thing that I want to use Raspberry Pis for, and this is a whole different night of discussion, but I want to use them as video players. That was my whole hope, is that we could get those and have itty-bitty tiny video players. But the new sprites are working really good for players, but being able to make that into a controller that's triggerable and can play video and send video out is kind of what my idea for using a Raspberry Pi is for. So pie in a box. Better than that and around my waist. I'm trying to lose weight. So anyway, no pie for me. Let's see. We talked about the tracks. We talked about recording your own. Any other questions on audio? I'm kind of running out of things to say. Quick break. Sorry. Again, when you're starting to think about your audio, analyze your entire haunt, how things are going to be laid out. We kind of makes it a little more difficult if you're changing your haunt up every year and the location of props. But, at least do a rough layout with the different props that have audio in them. And try and separate those so that you've got some separation between each sound, so you're minimizing the amount of pollution between different props. If you're doing a walkthrough, again, you have a little bit more advantage because you've got walls. You get some separation. I went through Dark Hour with Jake last year when we were in Dallas for the Halloween and Haunt Fest show, and they have separate rooms. It's so nice with a haunt, with a walkthrough. I personally don't have that, although inside my house, each room is a different scene, so I can separate my sounds a little bit better. But it really gets to be a challenge for me out in my front yard, where I've got, I've got talking pumpkins on the driveway. I've got my witches scene. I've got Papa Voodoo. I've got 6 or 8 other props. Trying to balance all of that audio so that they're not, on top of each other can be a challenge. Part of that, it can be alleviated if you are if your props are triggered and you've got delays. So hopefully you don't have every triggered vocal prop going off at the exact same time. So that helps ease it a little bit. But sometimes perfect storm, you'll have a bunch of them going off at the same time, and you don't want to have them infringing on each other. Now, Dan, you know me. I love having the Christmas guys, and I've been saying this for a long time. I've learned more about lighting from the Christmas guys that I've made friends with than I have from the Halloween guys. If you want to learn lighting, go over to the Christmas forums and spend some time with those guys over there learning lighting. They've already done a lot of the legwork. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Take advantage of it. They're just as nice as the Halloween people. Almost as nice as the Halloween people. I know to some people Christmas is a bad word, but again, there's a lot that we can learn from them. There's a lot they can learn from us too. So, yeah. My problem is Halloween comes before Christmas, and usually I'm too tired to do Christmas after Halloween's over. My wife says, enjoy it. So, Tim had asked about tone tracks. Jake, I don't know. I will be there in fact, I've spent 2 hours on the phone with Steve Kohlberg. I will be there in August for the Halloween and Hauntfest show. Is that when that particular show is? Because if so, I would love to come see it. Because if you guys have not been to Dark Hour, they put on a heck of a show. So I'm hoping to go back. In fact, Jake, I am hoping to come over and do a live cast with you guys when I'm in Dallas. We'll see how the time works out. But Tim was asking about doing tone tracks. And for Frankenstein and for some of the other boards that we do, 3-axis talking skulls, the way that we drive the jaw and give it its instructions to open and close is by separating out the two tracks, the left and right track. One track is going to go to your speakers that everybody's going to see. The other track is going to go to your controller, and that is what's going to drive the jaw. Can't make it, Jake. I wish I could. Too much traveling lately for Halloween stuff. My wife is having a fit. So, and also, I wish. Is that when you guys are doing the seminars and stuff, Jake? For those of you in the Dallas area. They've got a show coming up with a lot of great speakers, and if you really want to learn audio, go listen to Jake. So, anyway, so what we would have to do is actually go into Audacity, split the tracks out, one going to the speakers, the other going to the controller, and actually physically put in a tone every time we wanted to drive the jaw. And it gives you extremely precise control. I love it. That's how I get my jaws to work the way they do. There's a lot of different options for doing the tone tracks. For me, Audacity is how I learned when I first started. It works good for me. But it gives me super precise control. I can hold the jaw open exactly the length of time I want. If you're doing the tones, you want to start driving the jaw just a little bit before the actual audio comes out. So that you get a little bit more lifelike look into that. But that's what we do. It would take me a 2 minute audio track would take me a couple hours to put the audio tone tracks in. And again, Banshee and Wee Little Talker, you don't have to do that anymore. Steve's program automatically goes in and analyzes the audio track and drives the jaw. One problem you do have is when you've got tracks that you have audio or a music track or soundtrack behind it, and the vocal track is in the same track. And in that case, the board is going to respond to any audio input to it. So you're going to want to build in an audio tone track to only drive it when it's talking, not when the music's going on, not when the background screamings, the banging, all of that's going on. Tim, I don't do that, although I don't use a keyboard shortcut, although I have designed an actual key punch board to plug into Audacity and I had it running and up fairly decently, but it needs some refinement, and unfortunately it kind of went on the back burner when I went on to other things, and I haven't gotten back to that. But Brian and I were working on that quite a bit, and it really made it easy to drive those audio tones in. I'll have to add that back to my list and see if I can get that board finished up and working properly. In fact, if you want one of the betas, I can send it to you, so let me know. Jake just posted the link to their show there at Dark Hour with the seminars and everything, and I believe that's a 2-day thing, or is it 2 days and both weekends, or there's some great stuff going on there. So if you guys are available, make sure to go see him for that. Did I miss any questions? Yeah, I can't wait, Jake, for August. I really got excited. For those of you looking for another convention to go to, I will be there in Dallas in end of August for the Halloween and Hauntfest show. And I'm doing an all-day seminar on Friday. In fact, I'm doing a track. It is going to be the track. You're going to build a pneumatic prop out of aluminum, and when you leave, you are going to leave with a pneumatic pop-up. I'm going to do some soldering, a soldering class, a pickaxe programming class, and we're going to build a controller that you'll be able to use on your pneumatic prop, or on any prop that you want to use. But the programming that we will specifically write will be to run the pneumatic pop-up. So that's what I was discussing with Steve today. I will be building up my prototype this week, and that's kind of the plan for what I'm doing. And they've got a ton of other seminars over the weekend for that, and plus some stuff on stage. And so if you'd like to come join us, we'd love to have you for that. The problem, Tim, is even with the tone tracks, we can't get the audio boards to trigger correctly. They are they rewrote the programming, and we have to spend some time going through and seeing if we can readapt our programming to meet the new programming. And so currently the way Frankenstein code is built, or is written, the new boards will not work. They will not trigger. At least I haven't been able to get them to trigger with the current code. So, Miles, yes, it did. We are not by the stadium this year. For those of you that were with us in Dallas last year, we were next to the stadium. It has now moved about an equal distance in the other direction from the airports. So instead of being 30 minutes, what was it? West last time, it's 30 minutes east or whatever, but it's about the same amount of same time frame, same drive from the airport, just in the opposite direction. Host Hotel is attached to the convention center this year, so it's a much better design and layout. I'm really excited. Steve has got some really fun things in the works. Saturday night should be a super blast if that all comes together. A little different take on the Saturday night convention party. So I am not, Corey, I am not going to MHC. I taught at Transworld in St. Louis this year, but I just can't swing another trip and pay for another trip to go to MHC this year. I wish I could. I really want to go to MHC and meet a lot of the people that don't go to Transworld. But right now, the two big shows that I travel to, Transworld for St. Louis, and then Dallas for the Halloween and Hauntfest show. Oh, thanks, Miles. Miles posted a link. Miles and Susan were with us last year in Dallas. In fact, both took my Talking Skull class, and both had talking skulls when we were done. So we had a great time hanging out in St. Louis, in fact, when I was there for Transworld. So before I close, I have gotten permission from my wife to do this next week on Mother's Day at 5 o'clock. However, if I am going to be the only one here on Mother's Day at 5 o'clock, my time, 8 o'clock your guys' time, I am going to take the week off. So if you could quickly, if you're planning, if you think you can make that, and I'm not going to hold anybody's, you're not committed to this, but I'm just trying to get a feel. Whether you want to do a show next week on Mother's Day, again, same time as we've been doing. I'd love to be able to keep things moving and stay on a regular schedule. But again, I know it is Mother's Day, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble with moms. So even though my wife told we're having a party at our house, and she said I could tell my mom that I got plans at 5 o'clock, but yeah, there's a lot of different options as far as doing tone tracks. And again, we've tried to design our controllers. When I first got into doing talking characters, there, yeah, yeah, that'll work well. Yeah, I can see that working. We used Monkey Basic and actually had to go in and program individual movements for all the heads and everything. And it soon became apparent to me that we didn't need to, for most of what we did, we didn't actually have to go out there and have synchronized movements. A lot of times when you've got a character, you don't know where your audience is standing in comparison to your character. You don't know if they're adults, you don't know if they're kids, so you don't know height. So random movement seems to work just great for what we do for our head movements. And that's why we've tried to design the boards that we have, that we use, and go with random movement. Of course, if you're going to be putting a band together or something, and you want your bass player to have his head bobbing throughout the song, then you're going to have to go in and program the 3-axis movements in individually. So it just kind of depends on what you're doing. But for 90% of what we do for our haunts, random movement in your 3-axis skulls is plenty. So. All right, well, it looks like the consensus is we'll have enough people here to make this worthwhile. So I will plan on, a Halloween project for you, Mom. That doesn't fly in my household, but if you could make that work, Adam, more power to you. And my wife's kind of into this stuff too, but I don't think, can I make her a Mother's Day prop? Yeah, that might be an idea. But it looks like there's enough interest that we'll go ahead and plan on getting together next week. I do not have a topic yet, so if you've got an idea for a topic, post it in the comments. I want to be able to do what you guys are interested in, so leave me some feedback, and I'll be happy to try and work that into the schedule. And Miles, if you want more, a lot of the controllers now, especially the ones Steve's designing, don't require a tone track anymore for just the audio tracks. So it's going to be hopefully a little easier to get some of these up and running. But there still are places where we need to put in tone tracks. Miles, I could actually, if that's not too advanced for everybody else, I don't know if you guys are interested in seeing, how some of this stuff is put together and the mechanisms I use. Jarvis and this is the one that is going to travel with me. It was at St. Louis with me for Transworld, and I've been adding to it. It'll be with me in Dallas. If you want to see how I hook those servos up and build up those arms, we can certainly do that. They use some fairly substantial servos that can actually pick up a considerable amount of weight. I'll give you a little inside look if I can find one. One of the things I'm doing, and I don't think you can see on this guy, but if you see right here, this little round disc on the bottom of his hand is something new I am working on. And this is a small one, didn't have the punch I wanted. This is an electromagnet, a 12-volt electromagnet that I will be using for putting into some of my hands of my props. And instead of, when I want them to actually pick something up, instead of having them actually have to hold them, this takes a lot of work to get all these fingers to close like this and actually hold the cup and lift it and move it without it falling, and then be able to set it down and open the hand and release it. So instead of going to that, what I'll probably do is start building what I'm trying to do now. Build the hands here. I can program enough to get the hand here. And then with an electromagnet, these are not magnetized. And you can see then there's no grab there until they get 12 volts. And when they get 12 volts, they activate. And so now you have a magnet. So I'll put some type of a metal thing so he'll be able to pick up candles. He'll be able to pick up beer steins, skulls, whatever. But this is something, kind of getting into one of the projects, one of my testing projects. I think it's going to work. It's worked so far on my prototypes, but that's something that's in the works for some of my props. So, but the point I was trying to make is this magnet's pretty heavy. This little thing, and these servos have absolutely no problem picking up that extra weight. So, as far as servo or actuators, better for Jarvis. Hold on. Jarvis is steampunk. I kind of was going steampunk. These actuators for the elbows are not real. All that is for looks. It's got a servo on the corner, or on the elbow here. So this is all servo driven. These actuators are just made out of copper pipe. And all they are, there's nothing in there, nothing controlling them. They just slide. It was just something I added to it to try and add some character to the prop and make him look a little more steampunk. So, yeah, they're gonna draw a lot of power, Tim. And again, that's going to be on a set prop. I'm not worried about it too much. If I was having to use batteries, I'd be much more concerned about it, but I'm not. So that shouldn't be an issue. And again, it's just going to be so if I wanted to reach down and pick up a candle and hold a candle up and then come back and set it down. Again, for those of you guys who've seen my characters, it's all about the acting for me and being able to have them do those type of movements. I think that's what makes them look alive. So I'm always trying, like Big Red, where he actually slid the beer down the bar. I'm trying to incorporate other things into their actions to help bring them alive. So, Will, are you talking about the servo stuff? You sure you want me to tell you how much it costs the way I do it? Miles, as far as which one's better, servos or pneumatics, for doing this, I've done it both ways. And when I was building Big Red, I had originally built Big Red, and I think there might be some stuff on I think it's either on the thread on Han forum on him, or there might even be some video. I originally built his whole upper body out of pneumatics, and I designed a special board, two boards. Here was the control board, and here's how I controlled each individual pneumatic, turned each individual pneumatic. It had 8 channels that I could activate. And I built the entire thing, built all the components myself, all the mechanisms, all the connectors, and I didn't like it. Again, for the most part, pneumatics are on or off. You can control that a little bit by how long you leave them on, and you put air, you can get a little bit of motion, but it was not fine enough control for what I wanted, especially again, since I wanted him to be able to slide that beer down the bar and stuff. I could not get the control that I need for the props that, my characters that I make with pneumatics. And I know some of the stuff I do is more robotic than a lot of the stuff we do for Halloween, and where a lot of the big popular Halloween props have got a lot of fast action and booming and loud and very active. for me, that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. That's easy to do that stuff, to make that stuff happen. I'm trying to get much more refined stuff again. I'm really trying to work. I go to Disneyland, and that's what inspires me, and I am continually trying to build stuff that, it will never be Disney. I do not have their studio. I do not have their budget. But, I'm always pushing for that. So, for me, I like the control. We've been able to get that with the puppeteering, with the parallax boards, which is fantastic. It allows us to adjust all that movement, and we're really starting to get that refined now. I think if you watch some of the characters in this coming year, the witch scene is going to get the witch is totally being reprogrammed, and Big Red is being reprogrammed, and I'm really excited to see what we can do with them now with what we're able to do with puppeteering with servos. So, which actuator for the Miles? I don't remember. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Not just copy machines, Tim. Printers. Lots of little motors and actuators. The actuators I was using for the fingers. I know what you're talking about. The little tiny ones. They're in the other room. Little tiny actuators. They're about this big to dry fingers. And I did an article in Servo on doing hands and drove those. And again, you can do it. And we've designed hands that we can actually get the hands to do this. But again, that's 5 servos, or even you can get it down to 4. Very rarely do these, you can pair a couple fingers up. These 2 fingers, you can get them to work, so we can work them on 4 channels. But, it's a lot of work to get that. You could use them, Miles, for the elbows, but they're not cheap either. Those actuators, the bigger one that you're going to need to get enough throw in an elbow, that's an $80 actuator. And the problem with the actuators, I love them. Yeah, I love the torque that I can get out of the linear actuators. I don't have one handy. They're all put away. I love the torque that I can get out of those linear actuators. But it's harder. You have to get the angle to make it work. You have to do something like this. And again, if once you get this made, you can make this work, and it works for Jarvis because he doesn't have clothes on. But if I try and put sleeves on him now, all of a sudden, that's a whole lot harder to hide that. I could, of course, shorten it up by mounting it a little closer here, and I think they have plenty of torque. But, you have that extra problem. But it's the speed. And for most of my servos, I slow my servos down for a lot of my characters because I want that very smooth movement in them. But the actuators, if you want any kind of faster movement, you're not going to be able to get that out of the actuators. So that's why I just stick with the servos. It works really well for that. The actuator that I do use for mine, especially when I'm doing heavy ones, is this one right here on the back. Especially on this, you can see for most of the time on a 3-axis skull, you're going to have a shaft running down the middle of his head. So that's going to be your pivot point. That's going to be your balance point. It's going to be here. Well, with this one, we mounted this all the way on the back. So there is a ton of weight off the front end of this. And I use some pretty hefty servos and springs, and you can still see there's still a spring back here to help. But it just wasn't working at all. So I used the linear actuator back there. I've done that on, now that is my primary design for doing 3-axis with a mask, is I put that linear actuator to get nod, because this is the hard part. You can let it come down with a servo, but trying to pull that weight back up with a servo is really tough. You need a really beefy servo. And again, the beefier the servo you need, the more you're going to have to spend. Papa Voodoo is all servos. 3-axis skull is all servos, and all his body motions are designed same type of setup as Jarvis has got. Head turning, I can talk about that for a little bit. What are we doing next week? What did we decide on? Or did we decide? For me, I've got a servo back down here that's going to turn the head here. And I also have, let's see if I can bring this one up. So I'm going to have a servo right here that's going to give me my turn on my servo for my head. And then I've got a big servo down here. You can see, the other way. The big servo in a block that's going to give me upper body twist. So I have both. I used to turn the shoulders from up here, but it was a lot of strain the way that I had it put on, so this is a new revision. So this is why Big Red is getting reprogrammed, because I am taking this servo, well, one of the things I'm doing is taking the servo from here and putting it here for the upper body. And then the other thing I'm doing, the reason I'm changing Big Red, if you watch Big Red's video, there's one spot where you really get a view of him raising his arm. And instead of the arm being nice and clean here, it actually bends about right here. And that, I can't do it, of course. But his arm bends way down here as it rounds up. Well, it comes off the shoulder, and then his arm is here. And I originally built that way to help keep the clothing out, but I hate the look of it so much that I've redesigned. And now if you look at these, now the shoulder bend comes way up here. Of course, now I have all sorts of new problems. That's gorgeous looking, but now trying to keep the clothing out of all of these gears up here becomes a big issue. And now that I'm doing the foam body forms, I'm hoping that that's going to take care of a lot of that issue. Right now I'm putting big metal pieces and all sorts of stuff to try and keep clothing out, but I'm hoping that that's going to really help. When should you use a windshield wiper motor, Susan asks. Anytime you need a whole bunch of torque, you've got room to hide it, and especially if you need rotary motion, it works really good. I love wiper motors, and I use them a lot. I don't use them in my characters for this type of stuff, but I use them in a lot of other props. Again, they have great torque. They're cheap. They're controllable to a degree with a little bit of extra controller work. You can reverse them. You can control speed. And so there's a lot of things you can do besides just turning them on and off. But I don't use them in these characters. They're just too big and too bulky to be able to incorporate, wiper motors into doing this type of thing. But there's a lot of other props. I know Tim did. Tim, if you're still here, correct me if you're wrong. But the plants, as you walk down his skull hallway, he's got his plants all moving, and I think he has a single wiper motor, which I think he's redoing just because of all the linkages. But I think he's got a wiper motor with all these linkages going out, or cabling to move all the individual vines, so the vines are moving, as you walk down the hallway. Things like that. Cauldrons, making the stick go around and around in a cauldron, wiper motors work great at. Wiper motors are great. You can slow them down. You can reduce the voltage. They're designed to run on 12 volt like your car, but you can put 5 volt. In fact, for my stirring cauldron, I've got a 3.3 volt power supply running that to get it slow enough. You just have to make sure when you're using wiper motors, the biggest mistake I see made is people don't use a wiper motor with enough amps. Amps, not voltage, amps. So you need at least 5 amps power supply to run a wiper motor. And again, most of the wiper motors we get from Fright Props Monster Guts, you can reduce voltage on. I've got a couple that I've gotten from junkyards and stuff that would only run on 12 volt. So you kind of have to watch it. If you get a wiper motor, an oddball one, and you plug it into a 5 volt and it's not running, plug it into 12 volt and see if it'll run then. But I have run into that on a couple of them that I've gotten. So there's a lot of parts, things on cars to use. The little motors, the headlight motors, the motors for the back windshield wiper. If you can get vent motors, we've talked about that plenty of times. You know, if you can still find any vent motors, they're wonderful. So lots of parts on your car. No, not on your car, not on your wife's car. A lot of car parts you can buy that can be, you know, converted to our use. So, okay. Anybody else have any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and we'll plan on getting together again next week. Again, same time, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. Okay, if you guys keep asking, my wife's on the phone, so I'm not getting dinner anytime soon anyway. So if you guys keep asking, I will keep answering. Computer power supplies. I want to mention that. I love computer power supplies. And they can be converted. And there's lots of YouTube videos and how-tos on how to convert power supplies. And the one I've got behind my camera, my benchtop supply, that's what I did. Is I went through, I opened up the case, I cut wires, I spliced things in, you know, added the resistor, did all of that. And it works great. It's my benchtop power supply. I've got 5 volts and 12 volts and 3.3 volts, I think, off of that I can use when I'm working on projects. It's really nice. But it's a pain in the butt. It is. So what I did is I designed, let's see if you can see, this board, this little board. And what it does is you just take the connectors right straight out of the back of your power supply and plug them in. And now I've got 5 volts and 12 volts coming right out of here. So this is how I use my computer power supplies if I'm going to integrate them into outside or into a prop, is I add that board and just plug in the power supplies. If the power supply dies, I just take it off, pop in a new one, plug it in, and I'm ready to go again. So anyway, so that's what I do. Be a little careful. Again, this is 110. You have to go in, if you're going to go in and do the hack on these, just make sure that you're careful and you follow the instructions, you know what you're doing, because again, this can be a bit dangerous working with 110 and everything. Don't work on them plugged in either, please. I know that goes without saying, but I was watching one of the guys I follow on YouTube, and he was working on a hack, and he went to cut off the power supply. He was converting a light over to 12 volt, and he grabbed his dikes, and he went to cut the wire on the power supply, and I mean halfway through the shielding, and he goes, "Oh crap!" and takes the cutters away and goes, "I better unplug this before I cut that." It was like, oh, we almost had something really cool on YouTube, but I don't think he would have liked it. So just be careful, especially when you're hacking 110. Okay, that's why, and I really like 12 volt. Everything I do, I try and do for 12 volt. Tim, the specifics. I have to change glasses. The specific, or the ones I use are from Actuonics, and these little ones are L12-50-50-6-R. L12-50-50-6-R from Actuonics. You know, maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll do the pop-up for the... I really need to get that built this week. I got to get over and buy some aluminum. So, yeah, and that's the other thing, Tim. Yeah, you've got big capacitors in there that need to be discharged. So that's what I'm saying. Most of the videos I've seen, or the how-tos, do a very good job about explaining how to do all of that. Just make sure that if you're going to get into those, that you follow those very carefully, because you can get a nasty shock. You can kill yourself on there. So, so just be careful that you follow the instructions when you're dealing with AC. So, did I cover all of that? No fun that way. Tim, if you have any other trouble finding those from Actuonics, ACTUONIX. Actuonics. I got a tube here somewhere. One nice thing about getting the actuators is they come with the connecting hardware. So you don't have to buy that separately, which is really cool. Actuonix. It's Actuonics. Oh, thank you, Miles. Miles is my link creator, so we really appreciate it. Miles keeping up with it and posting all of those. Alien, yeah. Yeah, you got a comfortable couch, Tim? I don't know if that would fly well at my house, and my family's pretty used to this stuff, but... All right, guys, I think I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I've already gone well over our hour, so let's call it quits for tonight, and if you haven't, if you haven't, I'm going to go over and watch the Dead with Dave awards thing that was put out at 8 o'clock, or same time we started. So, guys, thanks very much for joining, and we will see you next week. Have a great week. Take care. Good night.